Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Crossing the Streams. Today I'm so excited to have our panel of guests here to talk about one of the greatest shows this year, possibly all time. I think some might agree here in this panel. It is Andor that we're talking about today. Andor Season 2 just finished a couple weeks ago as we're recording this, and the internet has been buzzing about it. It's not stopped since that final episode aired. People were worried we're gonna burn through it too fast, but no, we're still here talking about it. I'm still seeing memes daily about it, so I'm excited to have everyone here today talk about it. My name is Eric Rodriguez, also known as Nerd Chronic online. I host the Reactorverse podcast as well. Check that out here with some of these guests that you might have seen on that show as well. And I want to jump into it. I want to get right into the show today and introduce our great guests that we have, starting with, man, on top right here, Kyle Katarn, my old friend and buddy and employer in some fashion. Kyle, thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. And hello there, everybody. I'm Kyle Katarn. I co-host the Dork Forces podcast with my best friend Bendu, where we talk all things Star Wars. And I have a YouTube channel, also called Kyle Katarn, where I react and review to all the Star Wars, content out there, whether it's old or new, legends or canon. And yeah, I'm excited to talk about Andor. What an incredible show it was.
Of course. Next to him is Robert and Vanessa, late to the party. Not a Star Wars specific channel, but Star Wars inspired, because you started with Star Wars as your first reaction ever.
Yeah,
it's what kicked it off. When we thought of how do we start a video? How do we start the video? We were like, hello there. So that's why every video since we started has always been hello there. No intention to do. It was just like it's Obi-Wan. It's fucking Obi-Wan Kenobi. And how do we end it, bro? We say now it's time to say goodbye, and this party is over. This party is over is Mace Windu. Like that's what it's always been. So absolutely, we're excited to talk about Andor. Star Wars created our reaction channel because we felt like we had something to say, right?
Yeah,
and we just had to put it pen to
Force
paper.
Awakens,
of course, right out of the gate, the regate.
Yeah, absolutely. And coming here from with me in sunny LA is LaSalle. Kat, thank you so much for being here.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. And I'm just so grateful and honored to be amongst, I'm fangirling, y'all. I'm so sorry. I'm going to keep it together, but I'm feeling so inspired to be here with these amazing creators today. I've enjoyed so many of you guys' content. I'm Kat from Catherine LaSalle, self-titled YouTube channel. And you can find me on my website, catherinelasalle.com there too, with all my other links. But yeah, thank you so much for having me. And I'm so excited to talk about this show.
Of course, excited to have you here. And again, Sonny, returning from some of our other previous episodes. You're a huge Star Wars fan. I've been loving your reactions with your father, just catching up on Andor this past month and a half. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's always a pleasure, and I love talking about Star Wars. So I'm always game for that. And yeah, I can't wait to talk about Andor. Major Dad, my father, he says hi, by the way. So yeah, been watching a lot of Star Wars on the channel with him because he introduced me to Star Wars, and he usually quite busy at work, but he finds the time to watch some Star Wars with me, and I'm eternally grateful for that. And we love just the fact that people also wanna experience it with us and throw in all those comments and theories and like reading them. So it's been an amazing experience, especially with Andor. So again, can't wait to talk about it with everyone here. It's so great to see you all.
Yes, and I forgot to mention, thank you for joining us from Denmark, where it is currently like midnight or 1 a.m. So thank you so much for hopping in today. I'm going to hop over to our other guest here, Hannah Raeside. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. G'day there. Yeah, no, I am so thrilled to be here amongst royalty. I'm so excited to talk Andor, and wow, we've really made like a global chat room here. Denmark, Australia, LA. I love it. So good. But yeah, it's going to be a great time, great night, and looking forward to the discussion.
Of course. Yeah. Thank you again for waking up very early in the day for this.
That's okay. I've already had my coffee, so I should be good now. Should be kicking in.
And returning once again, my loyal co-host for many of these, Andres Ace Cabrera from First Cut. Andres, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, what's up, guys? I am so happy to be here with you guys. I think you guys all bring a great presence to the Star Wars community. I have my small podcast, Sabak the Block, talking about Star Wars as well. But you guys are a huge presence, and I really do appreciate you guys. I'm a big proponent of creating connection and positivity in the Star Wars community, and I think you guys all bring that. So appreciate you guys.
So Bach the Block is an incredible name, by the way.
Yes.
Love that.
Absolutely amazing.
It really is.
Love it.
Like you said, Andres, I have followed many of everyone here for many years, and the Star Wars space has been such a volatile space, but also such a generous one that I've found a lot of love and passion through. Everyone here has brought that passion to the forefront, very much so. And I wanted to have your thoughts on Andor specifically, because it was such a really, like Anna said, a global phenomenon. Everyone was just really enraptured by it for the past month, and it was unlike anything I think I've seen in a long time in reaction space, just pop culture. It was just like such a big water cooler show every week of everyone just like diving into it. Because of the length of the arcs that we got week to week, it was like having a movie, every week for 4 weeks straight. That's such a great way to sort of like, just in my opinion, digest the material. Because there's just so much to pack in there and so much story to unpack, from it. So I want to kind of go over that specifically before we get into like the current season and so what we thought about that. Just the introduction that we had to the show itself and just thoughts going into it. Specifically, obviously it came so long after Rogue One. Tony Gilroy was working on it for many years, trying to get it off the ground, and it finally found its footing a few years ago with the first season. So when we all started with that, let's go over sort of like, the introduction that we had to each, sort of piece here. Kyle, I'll start with you. What was your sort of, thoughts on Andor getting into it, coming off of Rogue One, coming off of like the, sort of launch era of, the Disney Star Wars stuff that we had for the first few shows, and just getting into that first season?
Sure, totally. Well, I was definitely part of the crowd that was a little bit perplexed why this guy Cassian Andor, of all people, was getting a show. Like, he was great in Rogue One, but I guess none of us really knew just how much there was to expand upon and just how pivotal it was going to be for telling the story of what leads up to the original Star Wars. But I didn't really even have expectations going into season 1, other than it's some new Star Wars. I'm going to have a good time with this. And it was almost immediately clear from that very first scene that this was going to be something a little bit different in terms of tone and feel, and more than that, just in terms of sheer cinematography and production design, like the framing of the shots, like everything felt a lot different right away. And God, I was so unprepared. I was emotionally unprepared for this level of like hitting me in my brain and my heart at the same time. Like, usually Star Wars just scratches that one little area in my brain and I'm happy, but like there was a whole lot going on. And I think overwhelmed, in a word, coming out of that first episode premiere. Like, I was blindsided, not at all what I was expecting, and it was so much better.
Do you recall what you thought by the end of the season?
By the end of season 1, I was all in. Cassian Andor is now on the short list of like favorite Star Wars characters, and completely unexpectedly, so is Mon Mothma all of a sudden.
Right.
Like, talk about taking someone who had a relatively minor role on screen. Like, she's always been a heavy hitter in Legends. I understand that, but like on Return of the Jedi, she's in one scene, and now she is such a like multi-dimensional, fleshed out, and like crucial character to the narrative, in ways that I really didn't expect. And so like I came out of this with a bunch of favorite characters that weren't new people. I hadn't met them for the first time. Like, I had newfound respect for characters that I'd grown up with, and I love that.
Absolutely.
That was something that I definitely didn't expect to come away with.
Yeah. Robert, Vanessa, same sort of stance here. Just getting into the show, what were your thoughts starting it, and then how did you sort of digest it as you got through that first season?
It's also funny because it's an actress who got eliminated from the movie itself, on the cutting room floor, who got to come back and holy crap, got to do this after getting from the movie. So fantastic turnaround for her and that character.
But I didn't know what to expect going into Andor. Like you said, you just have a character that we first met in Rogue One. But I feel like there was something there with that character that you're kind of like intrigued by, like, oh, who's this Cassian Andor? And I think that's what Tony Gilroy is like. I want to explore that a little bit more. So at the same time, I'm like, yes, I do want to know what's going on with this character, but I didn't know what to expect when we went into Andor. But I was pleasantly surprised.
So with Andor, like all it told me was what era we're going to be still telling a story in. Like Star Wars is just eras. It's all about different rise and falls of different governments and armies, and
Right.
you know, it happened. Bill, what I almost said, Battlestar Galactica. Everything happened before will happen again. So say we all. But it told me like, okay, the building of the Rebel Alliance, like that is what you told me. That is where I wanted to have some fun. What I didn't anticipate was like the boots on the ground level of storytelling that they were going to give us. And I don't think it hit me until I think it was the first trailer of the first season where they do that musical beat that feels, which continues on through every song and every episode of Andor. It feels like is the ticking clock, the doom, 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 doom. And it just feels like the spy thriller ticking clock type thing of like the 70s spy movies. With this one, they do a scene where it's like the backs of the different characters walking, and it's like boom, boom, and it just shows like into each one of like their backs in different situations of them taking on a threat. And I think they did it again in like another trailer. And for some reason, that one gave me all the tone that I needed with the music of like, damn. So that's how it's going to be. So I think the second we watched the episodes and made our way through, I'm like, yeah, this is exactly what I wanted. This is exactly what I was hoping it would be. It came out on the other side like that was incredible, because I think that's just where my sights aligned and the kind of story I wanted in the building of the Rebel Alliance. And so, but coming out of that, I'm like, yes, more please. But then I was so sad because it's like, oh my God, we're accelerating so quick. We're not going to get as much as I would love season after season after season of all these different stories, which they could do. But I feel like they did it well using Cassian.
Another faction of the Rebel Alliance.
Of course, there's plenty.
Kat, again, getting into the show, obviously your channel is so focused on Star Wars. You have had such an incredible, reaction and, relationship with the series over the years, with shows like Obi-Wan and then The Mandalorian that we had early on. What was your thoughts getting into the show itself for Andor and like the different tone of it?
Yes. Good point, because coming off of, especially from the content creation perspective as well, not that is the lens through which I view everything in Star Wars, but to your point, yes, this in that context of, yes, coming off of Kenobi, Mando, who was also a new character, that it was kind of like, how do we get a feel for this? We're going in blind. It felt similar for Andor because, to mirror what Kyle was saying, I was in the exact same boat of, I'll take it, but why are we getting this? I was genuinely curious of what is the motivation for his character specifically, obviously unaware of the treasure trove that awaited us. So I think it was curiosity in terms of just, I don't really have a connection necessarily yet to this show. So it really did feel like going in blind and with all of course, the new characters, but that is something that I have always been desperate for from Star Wars. It's let's deviate. I love seeing new characters. And so shows like Andor or The Acolyte, where we're being presented with a whole new cast, whole new roster of characters we don't know at all, stories that have not been told yet. That's what I was locked in. I was ready for just something new, something fresh. And I think it really, truly hit me. I actually went, I don't know if you guys remember, they re-released Rogue One in theaters for like a limited run the week before Andor premiered.
Totally.
And they dropped it was actually like a 10-minute clip from the first arc. I think it was actually from season 1, episode 3. It was Cassian's first interaction with Luthen. And they dropped that snippet in theaters, and that's when it hit. I was like, we need to watch this whole show on the big screen. Holy shnikes, like this is cinematic. This is the real deal. So I was patiently awaiting, of course, and then the discovery that scene came from episode 3, which is when it clicked for me, because admittedly the first few episodes of season 1 were a bit ambiguous. I didn't know what to grasp of the tone, and it was in episode 3 where I was like, okay, I'm locked in. Holy smokes, I underestimated this. I am sorry I ever doubted this, but that's when it blew me out of the water, and I kind of was grasping with the realization of what we actually had, like some high quality Star Wars television. And that was only the 3rd episode of a 12-season show. So that's when that was when it got real. It got real for me.
Yeah. I forgot they released Rogue One. I wish they would do that now for the postal finale. I would love to see it in theaters again. Sonny, getting into the first season with again Major Dad, and obviously you have a huge background with your upbringing with Star Wars via your father, and getting into the show. There's such a strong tone with it. Like Kat was saying, it takes a little bit to sort of grasp on what this is really doing for you. Do you remember any specific point in which you and Major Dad sort of locked into the show and really were running along with it?
Well, like we were in some way definitely locked in from the start because it's Star Wars, so it's just a world, a universe, a galaxy that we love being in. But yeah, it still took a little while, at least through the first couple of episodes, before we realized, okay, what kind of show is this? What are they doing here? Because it was so different from what we had gotten. It was still clearly Star Wars, but just like told from a completely different perspective, first and foremost, and with it was clear again that like the writing was on a different level. And I'm always like, when you're talking about the writing of Andor, and like you hear and you see people praising it a lot, and it makes sense because the writing is superb. But like, I always feel a little bit bad being like, oh, the writing is so good in this show, as to say it's not necessarily good in all the other shows that we've gotten. But it's just definitely more aimed at a more adult audience. And that is again one of the bigger takeaways we got, at least from the first 3 episodes, that this is Star Wars for the people who grew up with it from if they grew up or watched the originals in the movie theater, or if they watched them on VHS later on, or grew up with even maybe watched the prequels in the movie theaters. It's more for the people who have grown up but are still watching Star Wars and needs a different itch, like Kyle said, like this. It's something more than what we were used to. So it was almost like, I need to adjust myself here. I need to adjust my, I need to calibrate our enthusiasm to quote Partagas there. But yeah, man, when we then locked in, and I think it was around the 3rd episode as well, because it is also a slow burn, and that was quite apparent as well while watching like the first couple of episodes. That okay, they're really taking their time with this as well. So it was just like a whole big adjustment period during the first handful of episodes there, which I'm glad that they did in with the first season. I think they did release the first 3 episodes in one go, right, with the first season, which I think was smart, so that people could really, again, adjust and get into it. And then, from there on, it was, we were 100% in and adjusted for sure to what Andor was now going to bring. And I'm also going to jump aboard the why boat, because at first, why Andor? Thought that was a pretty complete character and the whole thing in a complete arc in Rogue One. But little did we know that there was a lot more to that guy and the entire ensemble as well.
The beauty of it was, I think, that Andor was such a blank slate, and for Cassian specifically, it just, you had so many boundaryless avenues to explore with the character, and Hannah getting into the show, and just like we've mentioned here, our general background with Star Wars and sort of the tones and things that we have come to know and love from the other shows. What was it like getting into the show and having that sort of open field of a character and areas to explore with that first season?
I'll be repeating a lot of what everyone said here, of the sense of not knowing. I think especially to highlight, coming off the context of Kenobi and Book of Boba and these names, faces, planets, everything that we are so familiar with, like that those shows have a different sort of at least baseline familiarity, where Andor coming in not only do we not know too much about Cassian himself, but a whole slate of characters that we got to meet. And even all the planets, like I don't think there was, apart from when we first see Coruscant, I'm like, I don't think there was many planets that we actually knew before we kind of got much deeper into the story. So it was that interesting thing of like, this is so different. And I definitely personally had a long time adjusting to that. I took much longer to adjust to that than most people. My like relationship with season 1 sort of takes literal years, because it wasn't until I think a rewatch where the sort of shock factor of how different this show is and how differently it's written and produced and how differently it even looks and feels. I think on my second rewatch that went away and I could actually look at the show for what it is and go, oh, okay, this is what we're trying to get here. Because I think I did have at the start like a period of like wrangling with like, oh, this is not a Mandalorian I know, or like this is not a side character like I'm that familiar with. That did take a bit of wrangling with me, but I mean, I like it now, so that's all that matters.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it's great to have that relationship, develop over years. And yes, like luckily we got years between seasons to really hone in on that and decide, how do you feel about the show? And luckily it came back with a bang. Andres, I want to ask you before we get to the second round of questions here. What was your thoughts getting into the show? Obviously, you're a huge Star Wars fan. You're a huge fan on just the level of politics it can have, the serious tone it can have within the show itself. What were your thoughts getting to that first season and how it developed over time?
Yeah, I was lucky enough to have the first round of screeners for Andor in order to review it, which was like I was losing my mind. First of all, second of all, it was lonely up in here because I had to stay quiet and I was like dying. I was losing my mind. Because, I'll echo a lot of what you guys said as far as tone. There is a noticeable shift in tone. Like, I'm sure we all are very familiar with the Star Wars tone. There's always a sense of silliness, tongue-in-cheek, kind of like a childlike quality to the Star Wars tone. And that's something that Andor, right off the bat, told you it was not going to have. So it did take a little bit of adjusting, but once I realized that, I embraced it completely. One thing that I'll probably take a different direction than you guys is my thoughts on Cassian. So this is something that's very near and dear to my heart and very personal to me. Was back when these casting announcements were coming out for movies like Rogue One and for the sequels, something that I was always a big proponent on was having more Latino actors and actresses in these roles as someone who is Latino. And someone like a Diego Luna, who I've known for years as just a fan of movies, felt personal. It felt very resonant with me as far as what that represents and what that represented for me and my family, especially a family of mine who speaks pretty much only Spanish. And Diego Luna, who is not just a Latino actor, but who very clearly has that accent and very clearly presents a Latino figure and a Latino character, and having that presence be in Star Wars was to me like a joy. So bringing him back to life, I was like, yeah, let's do a Before He Died kind of show and see what he got up to. And I was absolutely on board with that. But yeah, season 1 completely blew me away. I really do feel like the themes of it is some of the most resonant, powerful themes as far as like what it looks like to build not just a revolution, but build a revolutionary figure. And a person who is going to lead the revolution, whether you consider Luthen to be a part of that, but I consider more Cassian to be a part of that with his actions.
Totally. Yeah. I definitely feel that specifically for, Cassian's involvement with the show. I think in season 1, after it was done, I took away or left it sort of thinking like Cassian to me felt more like a cipher for the events surrounding him. He was kind of a guy getting swept up in a lot of things and doing his best to navigate it. I think that's obviously by design. He's just a guy who doesn't want to commit himself to a cause and to, the larger thought of the rebellion. So I thought like, oh, maybe there was like a little element they could have built up more. But in hindsight now, I could see that really teed us up really well for season 2, and just how, much he grows, how many strides he takes to become a rebel, a leader, a hero by the end, what we know in Rogue One. So yeah, they really sort of took his character and just like lifted him up even more so in that second season. And there's so much to unpack within that. That's why we're here today to talk about season 2. That was just incredible to say it in so many words. It's just, it really blew us all out of the water. I think week to week we were so enthralled with the arcs that we were getting. I know one of the first things that came out about the show was the arcs, and like having 3 episodes drop every night. From everyone here doing reactions, it's a bit of a nightmare to manage that week to week. Managing 3 edits, within a few nights, is a lot of work, but we all managed to get through it. And I'm glad we're here to talk about it. But I really appreciated just how much we got with the show week to week, and it was really so much to chew on. It felt again like a movie every week, and it felt like a complete package with each one, and like jumping year to year as we saw in each arc really helped us, I think, navigate just the thoughts of like, what did this mean to this specific point in time, to the characters and to the show and to the overall chronology of the series. So I wanted to talk about that, just get into like all the sort of nitty-gritty of the season 2. Ace, I'll hand that over to you.
Yeah, Kyle, season 2, obviously going into season 2, we had the backing of season 1. How did you feel going into season 2 as far as like what you were expecting based off what we got from season 1? And how did that change and shift throughout as you were watching each arc?
Well, first of all, I was pretty glued to all the promotional material. I watched every single trailer, every single TV spot for season 2, and I was able to glean a couple things from that. One of the first things we really kind of figured out was that the Gorman Massacre was going to be an event that we focused on in here. And I'm someone who knew what the Gorman Massacre was. I'd read the books and knew about it from Legends. And so that already just painted like a kind of a despairing tone. Like now season 2 is like this ominous thing that's like looming around the corner. And I was still very excited for it, but I started dreading it just a little bit because just based on season 1 and how they didn't pull any punches, I could tell they were really going to like go there. And they did. I was not disappointed. But in terms of expectations, I definitely had heightened expectations from going into season 1. Season 1, like everyone was saying, it was kind of, don't really know what to expect here. Who is this guy? Let's learn more about him. Rogue One was cool. I guess we'll see how this goes. And then going into season 2, it was like the absolute opposite. I was like, okay, Masterpiece Part 2, let's go. I was so incredibly impressed with season 1 that I fell into my own trap. Normally, I'm the first one telling people not to like fall victim to their own expectations and temper yourselves and, just enjoy it for what it is. But this time I did the opposite. I really did raise it up, and my hype was through the roof for when season 2 finally did come out. Because season 1 was nothing but like establishment, set up. We had a couple of payoffs, but it was mostly just sort of building up season 2. Because season 2, it was just nothing but, things were getting tied up left and right. And even though they gave us these 3-hour offerings every week, it felt like it was over so fast.
Mm-hmm.
Like the pacing was wild. Yeah, I really appreciated how much they built on like the tone and feel that they established in season 1 for season 2. And I think, again, just like not to harp on the production design, but season 2 absolutely blew me away. Talking about Gorman for a minute, the way the entire, like the architectural vocabulary of all of the buildings, like everything was informed by the spiders and spider webs, because it was like the single export of the planet. And it really did shape how the entire society was formed in ways that never really get referenced or commented on the screen. It's just there. It just exists for the world building. And that level of attention to detail just floors me. Just floors me for like, we're so, I don't know. I feel like we're living in the golden age of Star Wars, just in terms of how much of it we get and the caliber of shows like Andor. Still glowing about this show.
Yeah, it's interesting. You mentioned the Gorman, obviously being such the focal point of the season. Just rewatching everyone's reactions and like going back and watching the episodes myself. I noticed the episode with the Gorman Massacre is the only one where the title fades into the visual of the show. Like it doesn't fade to black and then we cut to the next scene. It like has a crossfade into the overshot of the Gorman city. So that's such a great point about just like that's to me like almost the climax of the entire series is that event, and then we get into like the aftermath of that, which leads us into Rogue One.
It's the watershed moment for sure.
Yeah.
It's I've watched a lot of reactions to Rogue One, and specifically like that's the episode that everyone wants the reactions for. And it's fascinating how effectively it seems to hit everyone that watches it. And everyone that watched this has like related it to a different atrocity. Just showing how kind of universally that works. Like people have talked about Gaza, they've talked about the Kent State massacre. As an old school Seattleite, it made me think of the World Trade Organization riots, WTO, back in the late 90s. But on the one hand, it kind of just shows us the disastrous state of our world, that so many atrocities just can spring to mind that you can relate to what you're watching. But also it shows the effectiveness of how they portrayed it and how it really does hit home for so many people of different life experiences. Like this is a real pervasive thing that happens in our history, and we can't look away from it, you know. That was definitely the overarching message of that arc, was don't look away. Like this is happening, you know, witness it.
Like the manipulation is so glaring as well that many who are in the story themselves kind of see it and say, don't do it. This is what they want. And, you know, it's like, that's kind of the warning coming out of it, because it's there. It's right in front of you that it can actually be manipulated and used against you when you do join together to fight, because that's what they want. But it's powerful, incredibly powerful. Like, you're right. Everything about this whole thing is like the crown jewel, I would say, of Andor season 2 is just that the entire Gorman legacy. And there's so much more too. Like, now I want to go back and read more about it, because Kyle, you said like there's more backstory to it. And I knew there was like kind of like talking about the Tarkin's like massacre thing. It's like massacre thing. Don't mean to belittle it to the fictional characters, but it's
a little landing.
What happened?
Yeah.
But I heard that was also from somewhere else too. So it's cool that there's all this interconnective tissue.
It's a very respectful way of acknowledging previous legends while still adapting it into canon. Originally, there was just one Gorman massacre, and it was Tarkin landing a ship on protesters. And instead of retconning that, this show acknowledged that as something that really did happen, and then added a second massacre on top. So like Partagas said, man, it is bad luck Gorman. Now they've got canon
bad luck Gorman
timeline.
Yeah.
Right.
Oof.
Yeah.
I just want to like quickly also add to like with the Gorman arc, something that for me, and I know so many others also hit really hard, was in the following episode, Mon's speech and the whole thing about the absence of truth, and how that also permeates through like a lot of things that we see and hear in the real world and through time, and it was so clear, like even though like a lot of this was written like years ago, so it's not specifically referencing things that are happening right now, it's still so universal, and it's something that repeats again and again and again and again through history, which is like, as Kyle also said, like it's a sad fact that so many people can relate to it no matter where you're from, because it's happening. It has been happening so many times, and it's very clear that Tony Gilroy is a student of history here, and he knows how to use it in such an effective way that it touches all of us with that. So it's again just like
Kind of like
job.
George. George was in history as well.
Yeah.
Universal themes, yeah.
Yeah, I'll jump to you, Catherine, as far as kind of going on the same thoughts as what we're talking about. Just what are your thoughts as far as overall season 2? How did it resonate with you personally? And how do you feel about the relevancy as far as what it was speaking to, and how you can personally take that into our surrounding and our real world?
Yeah, I think season 1 ran so season 2 could sprint, y'all. It was, and like Kyle, I had crazy expectations. Now that I knew that what they were cooking with, I knew it was going to be. My expectations were already high, which is perhaps dangerous because you don't want to set yourself up for disappointment. But it's not even possible with this show.
Right.
It even exceeded what I thought it was going to be. But yes, again, to Kyle's point, especially because the cast, crew, showrunners, nobody was shying away from the fact. A lot of their messaging and promo was saying, take everything you know about season 1 and dial it up times a million, and that's what we're rocking with. And so they were not shying away from expressing truly what was in store. I just did not realize how that would translate emotionally, the emotional reckoning. And again, I went in similarly anticipating the tragedy of it, you know, bracing for how many of these characters are going to die by the time we reach Rogue One. And it's still, I think that is what shocked me the most about this, and why I've deemed this personally some of my favorite Star Wars ever. The emotional weight and the reckoning that it's so impactful because it is infused with the things we're seeing every freaking day when you log on to Twitter or X. And I think that allowed it to hit even harder. And I'm sure Tony Gilroy, I just pictured him like not cackling like a mastermind, but how could he, so prophetic, how could he have known that this would hit as hard as it is in our current political climate and just the state of world affairs? And it's tragic that it is so frighteningly real. And it's crazy that, yes, this is some of my favorite Star Wars, in spite of the fact that it lost any sci-fi, like the fiction of it was kind of, that veil was lifted this season. I didn't even remember that we were watching Star Wars because it resonates, unfortunately, so much with the current state of the world. But I think that allowed it to hit so much more. The emotional weight, the impact, I don't think it would have been the same if we were in, well, if you were to place us in any other time in history. Again, history repeats itself. And so I think that's what Tony was saying when he wrote all this to begin with. He's just referencing the past, and we live in all these same cycles where it's still relevant. So I guess you could have placed us in any timeline within the state of world affairs, and it would still have that emotional presence.
I think that's the emotional part you're referencing. Obviously, I watched everyone's reaction to here, as I mentioned, and Kat, you were really struggling to articulate yourself through tears after episodes 7, 8, 9, and trying to just explain your thoughts on it. And yeah, I think they did an interesting part of teeing us up. We're jumping ahead a little bit here, but of teeing us up with the deaths that we kind of had in each arc, getting up to it and anticipating that we're going to lose Bix by the end of it, and then subverting that by letting us have a different alternate conclusion for her. I think it was a really masterful trick, magic trick to make us think that it can only end in tragedy, but there's a little sliver of hope with that character and like what she contributes to the overall message of the show.
Yeah. Heck yes. Thank gosh. Somebody had something nice in this show.
Crazy. As someone who kind of took a minute to get into season 1, Hannah, how did you feel about going into season 2? And now what are you feeling about season 2 as far as what it gave you?
Yeah, I had to completely eat my words because I'm like, this is the greatest thing I've ever seen ever in time. Season 2 was just such a, it just was so enhanced from season 1. But I think that's the benefit of having multiple seasons. And one of my big kind of, I don't know, shouts within the Star Wars kind of media realm is that I think all the shows that we have all deserve a season 2 at least, because the bounds and jumps that a show can make in its creation between seasons is so large and so necessary. And
Shout
I
it
often,
from the mountaintops.
Yeah. I often liken, if we look at Clone Wars, like we got season 1 of Clone Wars. Imagine if we were just like, it's a bit kiddie, it's a bit rough, let's not do it again. Like we would have never gotten season 7, which is like peak, right? So yeah, this had to happen, and I'm so happy it did for this show at least, because like what we were saying, it's so enhanced. It was so meaningful in every single sense. Every scene had some sort of key meaningful point to add or to make, and it was just quite overwhelming. I kind of relate to you, Kat, of just like the constant information and input was just like, especially during reactions, was just like, how do I word what I'm just processing here? That was very much my kind of whole tone for the whole season. And just talking about like the relatability of the show into the real world was very interesting to watch and kind of liken. And I knew, Like, well, I knew it was very relatable, but I knew it was like, okay, we're going to a different level here. Is a local like TV news network here in Australia that don't even cover pop culture, like a TV network made an article about Andor and it being relevant, and I'm like, this what?
Damn.
They don't even write pop culture news. What are they doing here? But they mention Andor and they're like, hey, this show about Star Wars is like the real world, and I was like, damn, people are noticing, and rightfully so. It's a big just tone poem of hours long that is just so applicable to so many situations and cultures and time periods. And my other comment to season 2 that I want to add in here is that I think that Andor season 2, I know this is not the question we're asking, but if George was still around today, Andor season 2 would be the most like what he would make, I think. I think in terms of the technology, types of actors, just types of creation, I actually think Andor season 2 is the closest of a project that if he was to make a TV show like that is the closest to what he would make, if that makes sense. But yeah, I have so many thoughts on season 2. It's hard to kind of put it into one package. Yeah.
No, I agree. I think, like what Sonny was saying earlier, just like Andor like speaks to, I think, a certain generation of Star Wars fan that, watched a long time ago, grew up with it. Obviously, I think we're all in some regard prequel fans. We were there when they came out, and it had impact on us when we were young. And back when those came out, like they got lambasted because of the politics and sort of like, people feeling like, oh, there's too much in it, like it gets too bloated. But I think this is really sort of like the refined vision, I think, of what George would want to accomplish, is having politics be at the forefront of like, what is motivating these characters, what's motivating these events. The Gorn Massacre specifically is such a, relevant thing to like real world events that, like Kyle said, anyone can apply their own history to. I was going through the comments of everyone here, and each comment from these channels and beyond, more channels, there's always comments, people saying like, yes, like this happened like in this time to my people, and like this time here. So there's such a really a beauty in it that I think, like you're saying, Hannah, George would really appreciate the level of connectivity people have to the show because of what it means to them politically, culturally, and like what it's sort of accomplishing through that itself.
It's like poetry, it rhymes, except it's rhyming through time.
Yeah.
Over and over and over. The same stories again and again.
I do want to say I love what Andor was able to do, was like they were able to like be mature enough to show all of this, even though Star Wars has always been like this, and kind of going off what Kat said of like pulling back that veil, because with Rebels, it's the same thing. You've got so many things that are happening politically in that show, but the fact of like the medium that it's being shown on, it kind of has like that, like, I guess like parental control sort of feel to it, a softening of what's going on. And even with the prequels, the same thing, like there's like that soft blow to it that people don't really grasp it like right away. But with Andor, it's like right there. They kind of pull away, say, no, we're going to be mature enough to say, hey, this is what's happening in this world, and then take parallels from
too subtle
the world.
For you? Too subtle for you, sir? Yeah. A little too much? A little too honesty? The glass is a little too clear for you? See it too well? Yeah, well, it's always been there. It never left. It was just, different layers, like an onion. Just had different layers to it. Yep. But yeah, now we're down to the core of it. We see what you're doing, Empire. Put in the fight. Godspeed, Rebels. That comes later.
I knew they were the baddies. I had a hunch. Yeah.
The whole time.
I actually think that's a pretty irrelevant concept now. Something that's really interesting is we keep talking about how Tony Gilroy wants to talk about the timelessness of this revolutionary kind of aspect, of this imperial aspect, fascism kind of rising up and taking over. But I do also want to acknowledge that George did tackle these themes specifically to what he was seeing in his current time, right? He was specifically talking about the Vietnam War. He was specifically talking about the Patriot Act and the Bush administration. This is stuff that he has verbally said and confirmed multiple times. So for me, I feel like as much as we can say, and this is something that I've gotten to not arguments, but discussions about with other Star Wars fans, is that we shouldn't be afraid to say, yes, this speaks to right now. and not just simply say, yes, this speaks to atrocities that took place 50 years ago. And it's like, no, this is speaking to atrocities we see now. And I feel like that's also important, is for us to take this kind of art, because it's art, right? This is the purpose of art. The purpose of art is also to communicate what we're seeing in our real world and what we're seeing in our current times, and to be able to point it out and tell you and basically kind of shake into you just how awful this can be and just how important it can be to stand against it. So I do feel like Andor really did bring that, and it brought that with amazing characters. Something I want to toss to you, Sonny, is the characters in this show and the way it's able to build off their arcs so incredibly well. How'd you feel about how season 2 handled its characters, and who do you feel stood out the most to you?
Oh yeah, the characters. That's a lot to get into, of course, because there are so many amazing, crazy, well-written characters in this show, from the first season, of course, and all the way to the end. And yeah, we unfortunately is especially in this season, we start to lose some of them along the way, like in each arc, starting out with Brasso. Like, that was a really tough one, just like out the gate there, because you already felt like connected to him, and that is really the thing with the characters, because they're so real and again well written. Like, you do feel connected to them, and you see where they're all coming from, and like even the ones that you are, of course, like actively rooting against. Like, I never wanted Dedra to succeed, but I still felt connected to her through just how her character was written, and especially also through the acting, and just the setup, and them like allowing the story to take its time, and or to take their time with the story, and therefore also the characters, and we can stay with them in the quiet moments and in the crazy moments that we definitely also got a lot of in this season, and those moments, and especially like if you look at, again, like the Gorman Massacre, episode 8, the payoff is so strong because, again, we're so connected to the events going on, and the characters all over, all over the place. No matter, again, like what brought them there, or what side they're on. Like when Cyril, was standing there in front of Andor, and he had him. He had him down the barrel, and Andor just turns and looks at him and like, who are you? Oh, I felt that so hard in my bones, and because, again, like, we've been following him from the beginning, and seeing the ups and the downs, definitely. So you just knew just like how devastating that was to him, and then boom, he's gone seconds after, and we're just sitting there speechless as the audience, because we're processing it as he's processing it, and all of a sudden, boom, it's over. That character's story is done, and it almost feels overwhelming, and that's also something like with this season in particular, and some of you have touched on it already, is it kind of almost feels overwhelming, with how they're just sprinting in this season with the payoffs. So again, it all gets mixed up. I know you asked about the characters, but it all gets mixed up because it's so like it's so well interconnected, and you don't have a story without the characters, and you don't have the characters without the a standout. You asked about standouts as well. Someone that I definitely want to highlight, who didn't really stand out as much in season 1, but definitely got time to shine in season 2, was Clea. That towards the end, especially like in episode 10, Make It Stop. What a power performance, and the fact that she was like just fresh out of acting school is just insane. Like what a great start to her career, and I also read that they just gave her more and more to do as they realized that, whoa, okay, we really found something here. So yeah, Clea was definitely a standout to me. But again, like you could say that for all the characters, because they were just so important to the story, no matter how much screen time they had, and so relatable, so well written, so well acted. So yeah.
I mean, you mentioned, rooting for Cyril and Daedra on some level, and that's so true. And I tweeted this out, after those the Gorman arc, finished and everything, just how, in my opinion, the legacy of the show, they will have such an impact on sort of what its value is like making you have some level of sympathy, empathy, some sort of connectivity to them as characters, because it's painting them as like people who are getting caught up in like the overall empire machine, but not being like willing cogs to some degree. Like Cyril, to me, represents someone who is ignorant about his contributions to the empire. Daedra represents to me someone who is delusional about her contributions, and she is just part of the system that she has grown up in, and she convinced herself like what I'm doing is for the greater good. But neither of them want to be there. Neither of them want to be doing this thing. Cyril doesn't even know what he's doing to a certain extent. Daedra tells party guys right away, I don't want to do this. I don't want this with this job. And even Luthen says like she's not a spin doctor, she's a hunter. So why is she being put in this? And so it's just this whole thing. Like I really think the characters, I will speak to this idea down the line of like I tweeted in my tweet, I said, fascism is often perpetrated by people who think they're doing the right thing, who think they're part of like a greater good or greater system that is being put into place for, the betterment of society. Until it's too late, they don't realize, how they are actually contributing to these atrocities. And yeah, that's just a testament to the show. We're looking back on it is how many people I see through reactions and through reviews really connected to those characters, not as just cackling, mustache twirling villains, but as real people who had own agency and like what they thought they were doing and what they were hoping to achieve versus what they were actually doing in the bigger picture of things.
Yeah, and again, like in fascism, like there are no winners. You look at those characters again, and it's just like if they know everything about what they're doing or just some of it, like it eats them. It eats them up, all of them. Like no matter what, and like anyhow, it's we see how Cyril goes down, Daedra, Partagas as well, and then we go right into Rogue One, and then Krennic. Same thing happens to him. It's just like, yeah, we see how dysfunctional it is, and how it just makes everything worse in the end, even for the people who are the perpetrators and who are supporting it. So it was very, very clear and very well done.
Tony Gilroy said during the Q&A, fascism doesn't just take down the oppressed. It doesn't just come for the people it's trying to control. It inevitably destroys the people who have worked the hardest to build it. Like
exactly, yeah.
Just Cyril and Daedra, that was so chilling to watch it play out, knowing inevitably what the outcome was going to be.
Yeah,
and then it's just as powerful of a message for people as like these authoritarian, these moments are real. They're in our history. They're existing right now in our present day. But it's not just mustache twirling villains, like you perfectly put it. It's people out there who really think they're doing the right thing.
Yeah,
they're the ones propping up these fascist states. People who think that they're right.
Sometimes it's also the ones that are willing to do it and are happy to do it too, and that's the problem. Those are the ones that are spears first sort of mentality, and then you got the ones that they send out into the crowd to hold the shield. So there are some evildoers out there, whether they're trolling.
What was his name? The scar-faced guy at the massacre who said, "I'm the trigger, you're the finger."
Yeah. I was just about to ask that question. I don't remember his name either, but he was just smiling through that. That son of a...
he was a twirler.
Terrifying.
Yeah.
It's often the people who are behind closed doors who are the ones that maybe are the most maniacal. And I really like that with Partycast too, although they do humanize Partycast in some fashion. What's happening? Because Partycast by the end, you see over time, but he does really become a mentor to Daedra, and I think there is like a soft spot that he has for her success because she's becomes like a protege of his. I think he serves as a really great foil to Luthen. By the end, Luthen, gets to go out on his own terms to some extent with Clea's help, but knowing that the stuff that he seeded out is growing, the rebellion is growing, but specifically his students are growing as well. They're becoming heroes, they're becoming leaders, they're becoming self-sufficient, they're going out there and accomplishing his vision, whereas Partagas has to go out on his own terms without any legacy. All his students are dead or in prison or failures, and so he kind of has to reconcile with the fact that everything he's fought for is fading away, and the rebellion still grows, as he mentions with Nemec's manifesto, that it just keeps growing.
The second they showed Partagas have any sort of worry, when I was like, oh shit, it's starting to affect him, it felt like the disease was spreading.
Yeah.
And the closer you got to the center of it, the more chewed up you were about it. Lonnie was deep in it, and that dude was falling apart. Poor Lonnie. Thank you.
He had the most stressful job in the whole rebellion.
And the Empire. Both. He got
Lonnie,
both.
MVP.
Getting that.
Seriously.
And they expect results over in both sides of the job. You got to come up with your quota each week. And Lonnie, man, thank you, because if it weren't for you, we would have had a little bit of head start.
Seriously, the unnamed hero of all of this.
Unnamed. Yeah, absolutely, man. All the way through too, man. These characters fire to the end. And the biggest one for me, dude, it's the vessel himself. It's the messenger. It's Cassian, yo. Cassian is by far one of the most badass spies in cinematic and television history.
No, he's awesome.
Aeronautis, well, I don't know that he does a bunch of music mixes and stuff and music videos. He did a retro version of the Andor theme, and that's how Andor feels to me, man. It's just that 70s spy, and I know it's not 70s spy, yo, but it's got the same kind of takes its time tone, like Popeye Boyle or something. So
I mean, it's almost cheating transposing Star Wars shows from today to the 70s, because we've never strayed from that 1970s aesthetic for the production design. So all you got to do is put a film grain on there, and it always looks like it's actually from the 70s and 80s.
But the beat of the structure of the beats got to fit it though, and they figured out how to fit it in Andor season 1 and 2. For me, it was a no-brainer the way it cooked. And for me, I didn't get that in Acolyte. I didn't get that in the Book of Boba Fett, unfortunately, but it's because it doesn't fit what the story is about. And when you jump into a 70s spy thriller and it just happens to be Cassian Andor in a movie that was from the 70s, it does end up working so well. And then you throw in synth. And that's why Aeronautis, I don't know how to say his name, but he did that theme, and that's how it feels to me, that Andor theme in that 70s style of retro music, because the score is fire beginning to end, and it already fits. It's just a much more updated, higher quality, futuristic version of that music from back then. And so for me, that is another character for the show from beginning to end that I just watched grow from Nicholas Patel to, was it Brandon Roberts who took it over, killed it and cooked all the way to the end, to where they just used the Andor score to send it all off, man. The build to the end, his whole Nicholas's score. It's beautiful. I wish they could recut. I know someone did a little bit of it, but let's do all of Rogue One and some of the music. No offense, Michael Giacchino, you got some bangers in there. We'll leave them in there, but we could just dress it up a little bit.
Yeah.
Good shit.
Yeah.
I can just see it now as the super laser hits the beach of Scarif, the Niamo's party mix starts playing.
Hey man, that's season 1 too, so I'm glad it got even more love in season 2 when they brought it back.
So
I felt that whole scene.
They should have brought
Mon Mothma when she was, chugging him back, and then she's like, "Oh, here we go,"
Crashing out.
just dancing. I was like, "Yep, I get you. I would be doing that same thing too." So I just love that they were allowed to have that moment in there,
and just the depth on that whole situation of her dancing,
and the fact that was the last scene that she filmed too.
Even more powerful. But we had two completely different perceptions on that whole dance scene with her, and man, we got into it. We were just kind of like, wow, I didn't think of it that way. There's this nuance and this layered level to so many of these characters, even when it's just her going out and dancing. We're having a 30-minute, 40-minute conversation about it.
Literally her version of wanting to scream into a pillow.
Yeah, and I didn't think about that, but you found it. So it was a beautiful moment. beginning to end. They're all in there. There's all sorts of these kinds of moments in there.
Also, in that same moment, something else that I took away from that is that this show really is one of the first Star Wars things to give us like a really honest, unvarnished look at a long-term relationship, like a marriage, not just with Andor and Bix, but also with Mon Mothma and her husband Perrin.
Mm-hmm.
Because we see them at multiple different times during their relationship, and there's usually years in between, and we really do see those highs and lows. And if you read The Mask of Fear, you hear about how Mon Mothma and Perrin really did have kind of a tumultuous relationship, but they really were there for each other and did provide emotional support when it really mattered. And you see that for like a glimmer of a second when she's crashing out at the wedding. Perrin notices, and he has a look of genuine human concern on his face, and it's not just like, oh, I'm worried about my meal ticket, which you might suppose if you've only seen the season 1 scenes where he is an ass, for lack of a better word. He really it's not great look for him. But he really is concerned there. And I think that it was really important for them to show that nuance, and that like it felt like a brutally honest look at what it's like when you're with someone for a very, very long time and you have those ups and downs. But at the end of the day, he was concerned for her there. And I really wish we could have seen how that played out for them at the end of the arc. We jump forward a year to the next story, but like I wanted more of that specifically. And I know that Tony Gilroy said that there was a scene written but never shot for the finale where Mon Mothma does talk to Perrin after leaving the Senate. And they kind of talk about like where we're at now, what's going to happen moving forward. But I applauded them for that. It wasn't all just storybook romance like you usually see, you know.
She could have trusted Perrin, supposedly, or he would have been way more supportive of her and what she was doing.
Yeah. Right. He's hurt that she kept it from him.
Yeah, exactly.
Plausible deniability.
Yeah.
Quickly want to mention his speech at the wedding, which was also a bit rough, but also just like you mentioned, him and Mon's marriage and how they tackled that, and then again just in his speech,
Sagrona team,
like a very honest, albeit bleak, look at marriage in general, but it was still kind of refreshing and a good speech coming from him specifically as a character.
That's such a good point, because yes, I didn't actually interpret I think the whole time my preconceived notions about Perrin. I love that we're talking about him, by the way. Can we just dial back for a second and acknowledge the writing in this? The characters we're talking about, a side character.
Yeah.
Maybe he's a side character. Not even of the main roster. And this is how fixated you can get on them. Yeah. Sorry, I just had to observe.
I will say, in my defense, I'm a big fan of Alistair McKenzie because I grew up watching Monarch of the Glen with my mom, Scottish soap opera. Nice. Pretty much the same character, but younger. So it's really funny that he's in Andor.
Deep
soap opera.
That deep cut. I love it.
Deep cut, man.
Damn.
Yeah.
But I love in the hospital.
I love that we actually got closure in the final montage where it kind of wraps a bow on everybody. And I was shocked to see that we jumped over to Perrin for a hot second, and he's got his daughter's mother-in-law slumped on his shoulder. But
I don't know. I cannot figure this out. I was like, what is happening? Like that was the most shocking part of the finale.
Shocked, but not
forget everyone else. Cassino's baby, forget it. What the hell is Perrin doing?
Yeah,
the earring and everything that had never occurred to me until just now is that could he be with Davos Skolden's wife, because Skolden himself is now in hot water as the one loose end that was not warned before Mon Mothma dipped.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking.
Like they're going to come after Skolden. They're going to come after Mon Mothma, and he's the only one public that's connected to her still that didn't go into hiding. So what if Skolden got disappeared?
It's true.
But still, like the kid, so like the kids are married now, and the parents are like, to get what? That's a weird.
It's a Chandrillan thing.
Maybe it's a Chandrillan custom.
It's already weird.
Going into Targaryen stuff.
Yeah. You go to the big wedding, you put your keys in the bowl. It's
all in the family. Just keep it in the
family. Cut off some of the hair, and
but it also kind of contrasts with Mon's, right? Mon is sitting with Vel in a table that has just rebels of all kinds. And I thought that was such a powerful finale for Mon, where she did establish community. She did find community. She did find relationship and love and true connection with her actual family, which is Vel, but also with people who are becoming her found family, which is the rebels. And the fact that she, although she is the leader and although she is the actual physical representation of the rebellion that everyone knows and everyone can put a face to, she is still sitting down with everyone. Doesn't matter what background or where they're coming from, and the fact that she found true community and true kinship that she was missing throughout her entire life, that she couldn't get from her actual family who rejected her at every corner. So I did feel like that contrast was just so beautiful, and it really elevated the character of Mon for me, which is why I want to toss this to you, Hannah. What did this show do to you when it comes to your relationship with Mon and how you view her? And did season 2 kind of like bring that up a little more or change that in any way?
I think I would die for Mon Mothma. I think I would lay my life down for her at this point. Such a rich character, and that is totally credited to 50% of it of Genevieve O'Reilly's impeccable acting chops and just ability to portray such emotion with not only her delivery but her expression and emotion and behaviors, and then also Tony just writing such a sympathetic character that you just constantly go, oh no, like not like she's coming so close to what she wants, but she keeps losing out and she keeps having to sacrifice. And that's such a big part of being in the rebellion, is that choice of sacrifice and what you have to sacrifice. And so that exploration through season 2 for her was so glorious. She was so magical, and I think there's so much symbolism that you can really study in her character all throughout the season, from the costuming, from the placement of where she is in a scene is just so well done. My favorite like highlight moment for me with Mon, of course the speech is fantastic, the whole escaping the Senate scene. Just like we know these two characters live, but it's like they might die. I don't know. I feel like they're gonna die here. Like, right. But we know they're alive.
I was afraid for Erskine so many times, even though I knew he was.
Yes, like he's gone. We're gone here, aren't we? Right? Like I just forgot what happened.
Him off. What the hell?
The tension was just so perfect, wasn't it? Hey, because it's like we can feel that. But my favorite moment with Mon is actually as they're escaping, when they kind of face those corrupt Bail Organa people, and they Cassian and Erskine like kills them, and then they keep going, and Mon takes off her kind of royal blue senatorial robe, and she dramatically tosses it to the ground and keeps on going. That is so symbolic. That is such great writing, and I think it just adds so much to this. Okay, she's taken that veil, so to speak, off of trying so hard to hide who she is and what she stands for, and she's let that all go now. So, yeah, incredible arc. Just what an arc! It was unbelievable in season 2. So good.
Yeah,
so
I think one of my favorite aspects of Mon, her journey, I get mainly in season 1, getting into season 2, was her relationship with her daughter, because there's one layer where you can make her a tragic character where she has to, sell out her daughter in marriage to, establish that connection with Skolden to get the banking thing set up. But they add something on top of that where it's something that her daughter wants to do because of their traditional values. And that in itself makes it even more tragic, because it's not even something that Mom could be like, oh, I'm making this great sacrifice, I know it's for the greater good. Her daughter is so cold to her about it, and she's so I want to do this, and it's against Mom's experience that she had to do it herself when she was a young woman, and she would want better for her daughter. But seeing how she can't even make a sacrifice without it feeling like within her own control, it's such a tragedy in itself. She has to watch her daughter gleefully go into this arranged marriage and just have sort of everything taken away from her from both ends, both just her daughter being leaving, but also just her daughter being happy to leave her in a certain sense, not even having the vindication to be like, oh, I'm being somewhat noble about this. It's something that basically no one appreciates anything that she's doing about it. Even for Tay eventually, coming down and having his own issues because of that as well. So that dance scene, as Robert and Vanessa were mentioning, it has so many layers to it. And I think that's such a breaking point for her to set us up for what she would then become, the Mon Mothma that we know, getting into, the Senate and Andor and so on, for Rogue One and the rest of the rebellion. I really love that, they take their time to set that up to make sure that she is not sacrificing something so offhandedly and like just being someone like, oh, I know what I'm doing for the greater good. No one else appreciates it, and I can like just like be so proud about it. She is still being very torn apart by every action of it because no one's even giving her the gratitude of being like, oh, what you're doing is like very kind and noble and like selfless.
Yeah, and I also think that now that you mention it, in that first arc and everything that happens, and when she's dancing there in the end, when you get to the next arc after that, she has completely, shed or like cut her ties to her personal life as a Chandrillan, and like that was that we saw in the first arc, and then later on, we already talked about the amazing episode 9, and she gets out of the Senate and throws off that robe, and that's when she sheds all her ties to that world permanently. And then Cassian comes with his code and is like, "Welcome to the rebellion." And now she's enveloped in her new identity. So that is actually, beautifully done. I didn't even think about those connections until. Yeah, now that
I'm so glad you said that, because that's what I was going to say too. Is the jacket then being put over her? It's like a double symbolism happening.
Yeah.
Not to mention she's wearing white under the Senate gown, showing the purity of her cause as well.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's all
Taking
there.
off the corruption.
Beautiful. Yeah.
It's all there. It's all there for you to find.
Actually, speaking of
layers.
colors and just production design, not to harp on production design, but you were talking about Andres was talking about the contrast of Mon Mothma's former life in Coruscant versus sitting there at the table on Yavin with her peers, being, with her people finally. And just from a production level, I love the way they made Yavin so colorful and so warm and so rich and vibrant with its palette, versus they literally had this woman living in an ivory tower, like stark white walls everywhere. Everything was impeccable and clean, but it was spacious and it was empty, and all the lines were hard. Like there was nothing soft about her life. Even though it was lavish, it was very cold. And then you go to Yavin and it's the opposite. Everything is very rustic and rudimentary, but it's so warm and it's so full of color and life and, good cheer and people eating with you at the table. And it just goes to show she really didn't give up that much of, like, there was things she was willing to give up. All the things that really mattered are still there for her in Yavin. Yeah. I love that visual contrast.
Yeah, the contrast is great. Just for again, this being sort of like the focal point of the Star Wars universe, being BBY, ABY, this being the center of that, is that Coruscant, even though it's the capital of the galaxy that we know, and it's like really sort of lavish and beautiful, as you said, it has like a big contrast with the other worlds where it doesn't have a lot of green in it. It doesn't have a lot of natural life. It's all steel and stone, and Yavin being the contrast to that is such a great way to sort of end this series on and set up what the rebellion and like the future of the Star Wars universe should be, which is like this like area of like a life growing, like plants and crops and everything around them sort of flourishing. So yeah, that's a really great detail.
If there are any casual Star Wars fans listening to this, he just said BBY. You should know that stands for Baby Yoda.
Yes. And ABY stands for
After Baby Yoda.
After Baby Yoda. Sure.
Sure.
And it almost got destroyed. It was this close to being destroyed, Yavin. It's close by a hair. Ended up destroyed, almost getting blasted, but it remains. I think it does. Kyle, anything happen to Yavin anywhere else in the book?
Some crazy stuff happens on Yavin, but the planet is good to go. Planet's good to go. There is an ancient Sith Lord's ghost haunting one of the temples that they're using for the base, though. So
kind of like Corbin, huh?
That becomes a funky good time for Luke and his students in their academy.
Exar Kun?
That's the one.
Yes.
Brain
still works. Great.
Yeah, it's interesting how all the rebel planets kind of embody that, right? All the rebel bases, Dakar, Ajon Kloss, all of them have that kind of greenery. Also, it's something that stands out to me, and this is just naturally where I'm going to go, is the diversity, not just of actual actors and races of actors, but races of aliens. We see a lot more aliens on Yavin than we do anytime on Coruscant or anytime on Chandrila. We see actual different cultures coming together. We see the embodiment of that. I like how the Gorman girl, I forget her name, the Woman's girlfriend, Drina, when she comes on the planet, she's coming from the Gorman massacre. And I'm sure there's other planets who are coming from different atrocities that the Empire did to their planet. And they're all coming together on Yavin to represent this kind of like union and just mutual rebellion that they have, that regardless of what background they come from or what race they are, they're going to fight against the Empire in this unified front. So
They have hope.
Yeah.
That's what rebellions are built on.
Yeah. I mean, that was one of the first things I ever learned or was, sort of imparted on about Star Wars when I was a kid, which is that the Empire are all humans and the Rebellion are a collection of diverse aliens and people. And that was always like the really important aspect of the messaging of the series for me, is like the homogeny of the Empire, contrasted with like the Rebellion and what that means to have like a group of people coming together to fight against it. So yeah, that's definitely like something that I think they did well to uphold for this final season.
I think that was a very deliberate move by George to comment on supremacy. That's why the Empire is exclusively human in that way.
Yeah. All in white
with accents,
uniforms, and
yeah.
They got Walter Donovan in there rolling on an AT-AT. Yeah,
saying schedule all the time.
Yeah, right. That's always the red flag.
Schedule. Well, there's lots of flags, that's for sure.
Eric, did you want to move on to the legacy and the impact?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, we're talking about a lot of that already, but as massive Star Wars fans, as we all are here, we've been with the series and the franchise for many years now, and we've seen a lot of changes with it over the last decade. Post Disney and onward with the TV era, and now like the movies coming back soon enough. We're getting into, I think, the next phase of that, where people talk about Andor being an anomaly within the Star Wars universe because it's so great. But to me, it's honestly just the next evolution of it. It's just the franchise finding its own identity still, and like refining itself, and like opening itself up to, like we said, just maybe just some more adult oriented stuff, where we can have stuff that's still aimed for maybe younger audiences, like the franchise was incepted on to begin with. And I think that the show itself will have a huge impact on like where the series goes next, and we still have elements of that to come. We have Beau Willimon, who wrote 2 arcs in season 1 and 2. We'll be writing the James Mangold film coming up as well, and so things to look forward to from this series onward, that we can hang on to and see where that goes. But I want to talk about what your thoughts are on where it stands with you in terms of just how you feel about the series overall compared to other shows like Clone Wars, Rebels, Ahsoka, so on, and just what you think it sort of contributes to your personal love with the franchise and where you think it will take it to the next level. Robert and Vanessa, I'll start with you two. Where do you think Andor sort of carries the franchise into for your own personal sensitivities?
It gives a new perspective on Andor the movie, and just the same as the Catalyst book did Rogue as One. Well. Yeah, Rogue One. Yeah, Rogue One movie. Yeah. Just like as Catalyst felt like it had more with Krennic and everything going into Rogue One, this also has, you have a newfound like perspective on different things when you go and watch some of the other things that Star Wars has in store that you maybe not had like thought about, but Andor gives that ability to be like, oh, let me watch this in this different perspective or in this different way, and kind of shed new light on certain things. And that's what I like about Star Wars, is that there's so many different things that are going on that you can watch something, focus on something completely different when you're watching it, and then something else will come out, whether it be a book or a video game or a TV show like Andor, and then you go back and watch some of the older stuff, and you're like, oh, well, now I'm watching it in this different perspective. So it feels kind of fresh and new when you're watching it again.
And it also kind of fills it in, too. So, like, Plagueis really filled in for me the Phantom Menace, and made it that much better. Bad Batch, Attack of the Clones. So doing that with Rogue One, you're not just filling in Rogue One, you're filling in A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi. Like, you're filling in the other bookend of the beginning and giving us a whole lot of look at what was going on while, this the terror was, holding the world, the universe hostage, whatever. But with these characters, like, it did make it to the point where I want to see more from these characters. And if we are going to go so far as to, make these amazing characters and let them live pre, trilogy, we could possibly bring them back later on. Like, why? I don't understand, why we wouldn't. So it does give me hope that any of the characters that did survive could have some sort of connection in the story going forward. You didn't have to be in the original trilogy. Doesn't mean you weren't there. So you can do it on the other end of the spectrum when we've got an Andor out there. We got another Andor in the universe. So let's just boom, hook them into the story. Yeah, the story going on the other side of Return of the Jedi. So that's just where I'm super excited for. The fact that we had multiple of them survive, including Clea, man. I'm throwing all in. I went all in on our reactions with Clea. Like, she is my hero of the rebellion now. Like, I want to see big things happen for her. And unfortunately, I hate to say it, but I think her big thing should be her having a hand in whatever goes down in what I hope would be Rogue 2, and that would be, the Death Star 2 plans. Even though it was the Emperor feeding them information, but you could make a hell of a story of all that going down. And we saw Mon Mothma's reaction to when she said it. And you could have, Val in there. Val in there as well, and it's like that last syndicate of spies all went down. Like your hive mind of your best that were left went down for this final, a retrieval of more plans.
They sacrificed themselves
I would love
for
to see
a sunrise.
Rogue 2. Let's make it happen. Rogue 2.
Rogue 2. I can't hear Rogue 2 without hearing the snowspeeder pilot being
this
like,
this is Rogue 2. I found him. Repeat. I found him.
I mean, if you're going to have Rogue 2, obviously it's got to be about the Bothan spies, right?
Of course.
You got to finally see a Bothan in Star Wars. Like, I don't know.
Come on, please.
I'm suspicious about the Bothans because they're like really being intense about not showing us a Bothan in new canon.
Yeah.
Usually that means they're saving it for something, but the longer time goes on, I'm like, what are you waiting for?
Yeah,
it's just one guy named Manny Bothans.
What if it's Clea's race? What if it's Clea's planet?
Yeah, they had to be the cat people. You need the cat people to be in there. But yeah, you're totally right though. There's a handful of characters that it almost feels like we're remiss to not have them in Rogue One to see where they contribute in that. So I would love to see them show up again if it's in a movie or like in the new timeline in the sequel trilogy. Hannah, getting into the future of the franchise with Andor's influence, how do you feel about the future of the series now that we have crossed this threshold, and are there any characters that you think you might would like to see show up again at any point in the series?
Yeah, I think just specifically to the character thing, I saw a really great theory. I think it was not even a theory. I think it was just like a meme image on Twitter the other day where Vel could end up being that character that we actually see throughout the sequels, and I think specifically in Rise of Skywalker.
Right.
That I think the character has a name, but I don't know her name. But it's that sort of older lady, that the lesbian one at the end, that when they win, she like goes and kisses someone in the background.
Yeah.
That lady, Vel could be her because they actually look so much alike.
Very similar.
Like if Vel was older, I was like, dude, that would actually be so amazing.
Yeah,
they do.
I love that sort of just concept. But yeah, in terms of just where a lot of these characters could be picked up, I think there's always a possibility. I mean, Rebels ended in 2018 and it ended with, oh my gosh, Hera and Kanan had this like green little funny little sun thing. And that was just like, wow, what an ending. And then I don't think anyone would have slated, I bet they're going to do a live action Ahsoka show and he'll be in it. Like no one would have said that. Right. So, I think the storytelling of Star Wars and the media which it shows its characters is ever evolving. And we're seeing that now. And I think there's all possibilities to see any character that we did not see killed in this show elsewhere in the Star Wars future, which is pretty fun. I think that's what makes it exciting for future shows, even books and things like that. I think having these open-ended characters that people really love at this point, and we're all quite connected to various characters. Like give me the romantic drama of Perrin after Mon Mothma leaves. Give me a book on that, okay? I think that'd be great. So yeah. I think there's a lot of opportunity here, and like we're saying, there's a lot of characters that we don't see in the OT that could easily be just, working in the background and still survive after return. So yeah, there's this show brought us a lot of meaning and depth, and I think that's just what I'll forever appreciate about Andor, and especially this season 2. The ability that we all had to just really get down deep into the meaning of it, and also the emotional impact of it all. I mean, I'm pretty sure, like, again, yeah, Kat, I've seen your reactions, at least, and like everyone's reactions is just crying by the end of it. We're all just like messy crying, and I think that's so special in Star Wars. There's so many epic moments. We have Luke Skywalker returning in Mando season 2. Like, there's so many high moments, and wow, we're jumping up and down. But to have these really in-depth moments where we feel for characters, where we feel the pain, where we feel the sacrifice, and we feel, when a character dies and feeling that shock, sort of makes those high moments that we get to experience so high. The varying levels of emotional depth of Andor is forever, I think, going to be important to Star Wars.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we talked about so much about the characters and everything about that the series contributes, and the relation to, the Gorman Massacre and how they accomplished that. One of the great things about the way they executed that episode, to me, was just that so much of it is about the people. It's not, they don't do it where it's through the lens of like one specific, person or one specific couple. Andor's there, of course, and Will and the others, but they do a good job elevating the entire story by so many different characters that we see contributing to moments within the episode, including, like we said, Cyril and Deirdre, and like how they, had a part to play in that. To me, honestly, I would like to see Deirdre show back up after the Empire falls, and perhaps she gets put into the rehabilitation program or whatever they were doing with in Mando season 3 to bring back ex-Imperials into it, and she might be the one. She might be the one to crack the case that there's the First Order is on the rise, because she has that experience to look into like these clues into these trends, and it actually would be an interesting arc for her, a redemption arc, to have her put her skills to good use for the New Republic to help them figure out what's on the horizon from them. So I would love to see that. And Sonny, likewise, getting into everything. The characters, the story itself. Where does Andor land for you in the overall pantheon of Star Wars? And just your enjoyment of it, and also your relationship with it moving forward.
Well, it's very, very high when it comes to Star Wars in general, and I hate ranking things, but it's definitely way up there. Speaking and you guys have already said a lot of it, like just speaking lore wise, and just how much it does for moving into Rogue One, and that straight into the original trilogy, and everything that it adds to the story. But another legacy that I hope that Andor is going to mean a lot for Star Wars as a franchise is that we're going to get more like this, that this is hopefully going to show the powers be that there's definitely an audience for Star Wars that is a little bit different than what we've been getting, and again, it's not to speak badly about what we have been getting, because I personally eat it all up. But as I also said, like, this show just scratches that a different itch, and it is more for the people who have grown up with Star Wars and are now grown up. So I just really hope that with the success of Andor season 1 and especially season 2, and I really hope that they're also gonna win some awards. Like they just submitted Andor season 2 in like 23 Emmy categories or something. So I really hope that is also going to move the needle, and all the executives are going to see that yes, Star Wars can also focus on this, and while still doing the animated series. And I know they are recalibrating a lot inside of Lucasfilm just in general right now, but I really hope that is another legacy just in the real world of Andor, is that we're going to see something like this again. And then of course also I hope to see some of the characters inside of Andor again, going forward, and yeah, give us a Rogue 2, or let's see what ultimately happens once Dedra gets out of jail, if she ever does. And yeah, so there's a lot of possibilities there, but hopefully also possibilities for more series, more Star Wars content like this in the future.
Yeah, you're totally right. For the Emmy categories and nominations, I mean, it really does make a great case for just like, elevated sort of genre storytelling. Like you can, look at nominations and sort of award season, tropes and think like Star Wars might not fit into that, but this show really does, I think, take it to the next level where like it really should get a lot of recognition for what it's saying and what it's accomplishing. It says a lot of beautiful, relevant things to like our current times, and that's like the strength of any good storytelling. So I would love to see it get that recognition. Kat, getting into recognition of Andor, what we've given it here and beyond. What do you think it's going to land for you moving forward with the series for Star Wars? What do you think it sort of impacts your attachment to the franchise moving forward?
Oh, I'm back in, y'all. I never left, but I've never been so hype. Truly, that's why I'm so sad that this show is ending for so many reasons. But the fandom, dare I say, unity, not even it. I think it transcended the fandom, y'all, because I saw people online, again on Twitter, who I've never seen discuss Star Wars before, perhaps never even watched Star Wars, and I think the word of mouth inspired them to check out this show. And to see people, if this show was their first impression of Star Wars, like, yes, I really feel like, and I'm so grateful to see that, because I think season 1 was a bit of it felt like more of a struggle. If you knew, you knew, and it was so much harder to try to get people into the show. And I feel like season 2, it was a completely different ride, and it was just such a fun experience, again, to commiserate with everybody online after each round of emotional damage week to week. So I'm going to miss that and savor that. But I feel like, and I'm stealing, somebody else told this to me, that people are going to be talking about this show for years to come. And I'm trying to cling to that. Like, they're right. It doesn't have to end here. It's going to take years to just even process what went down in season 2. And so I'm looking forward to the fact that we will, of course, always have this show to come back to. And yeah, to echo many of the same sentiments you guys have been expressing, the new precedent that I hope this will set. Again, hopefully with that Emmy sweep, ride or die, y'all, let's go. We ride at dawn if they don't clean up. But, that can only bode well for Star Wars and the fan reception. And again, the word of mouth and truly the historic moment that I feel like we've experienced with this second season. I'm going to echo what you said, Eric. Thank you for what you were saying, that this doesn't have to be an anomaly. It can bode well for what the future of Star Wars is. It's still, I guess, in the history of Disney Star Wars, it's still fledgling. They're still getting a feel for what they want, and the tone can be different, as everyone's been saying. This can coexist in a universe where we have the Bad Batch or Skeleton Crew or Young Jedi Adventures. There's something for everybody in Star Wars at this rate. And I hope that they recognize and see, the older fans, people want something that is more mature, perhaps tailored to the adult audience, that has us by this emotional grip. So I'm gonna cling to what you've been saying. That helped pull me out of my sadness that the show is over, but it doesn't have to be. This can help set a precedent for the future of the franchise.
Right. Yeah, it's like I said, it's an evolution, and I think the show represents just a new avenue. If you were looking at, an RPG, whatever, like a skill tree, this is one new branch, to explore, not like something that's taking over everything. I think, Star Wars, like you said, is so diverse, and it has the opportunity to reach so many people on different levels, that this can be something new that they can explore while not overshadowing or overtaking other elements that we've come to know and love over the years. Kyle, I know you've been a big proponent for that diversity in the franchise, and just like what it means to embrace different aspects of the series, without having to shut down other ones to enjoy one specific aspect. I guess, what does that mean for you with the show and going into the future with it?
I would hope that the legacy of Andor, the show, would be just that the door is now left wide open for more experimentation of different kinds of subgenres within Star Wars. Star Wars is itself a genre. It's a setting, you know. And I've always kind of viewed Star Wars as like kabuki theater in a way, where like you can, as long as you check the right stylistic boxes, you can kind of do whatever with it, and it's still Star Wars, you know. Like people can't take that away and say that this isn't Star Wars. But the fact that you were able to stray so far from that original tone and give it a completely new existence, and that resonated with so many people, should send the message to the creatives that like we are ready for any subgenre within Star Wars. I think would be really well received. And I'm one of the people clamoring for more shows of this quality. I do think that it's important to make a distinction between quality and tone. And that I don't think that every Disney Plus show would be more successful if it was more like Andor in tone. That's absolutely not true. There is all kinds of different styles for Star Wars. Star Wars Rebels would not work if it was toned like Andor. Andor would not work if it was toned like Star Wars Rebels. Like there's different strokes. But I think I don't think that Andor has redefined what it means to be a Star Wars show. I think it has simply demonstrated that there is no definition anymore for what makes like a proper Star Wars show. And we can really go in any direction with it. And to a creatively minded person, that's a very exciting place to be, I think, for storytelling. And so I'm very excited to see what effect this really does have on future storytelling and how new subsequent shows are approached. But I do hope that we're able to retain the original tone and feel of things that came before Andor as well. In terms of what it's achieved, I think the ultimate achievement of Andor really is, like, to echo what other people have said, recontextualizing Rogue One. The emotional beats are completely different now. And honestly, just in giving weight to Cassian's sacrifice. Because watching Rogue One for the first time, he's a dude like who's on the mission. He gave up his life at the end. You're like, okay, that's sad. That's great. But now we are so invested in Cassian as a person, and we are invested in his future success that like we feel the same loss that everyone in the rebellion feels. When he doesn't come back from that beach, because now we're in there with him, and we've lived alongside him for 2 full seasons of this show, and it hits so differently. Bendo and I
can't even watch it
as soon as we were done with season 2, and like. I don't remember it being quite so rawly emotional. It was intense. It was fantastic.
I mean, I think it even just recontextualizes what his sacrifice means. Obviously, now that we know he has a son out there, and that his legacy lives on to some aspect, and like he fought for something that a part of him will live to see. And I think that it's what Luthen's says, like, I fight for a sunrise I'll never see. I think it's like, if anyone could make a sacrifice for the sake of their own child, that's something that I think most people would be willing to do. And the fact that he was able to do that even without his knowledge, deliberately being in that direction, like I think it's such a beautiful way to again, like recontextualize what that ending means, and what the overall messaging of like that point in time in Star Wars means, from BBY to ABY. That was always like such like I think of not a point of contention, but like a point where people were like, why this specific point? I guess because that's when the movie started, sure. But now, because of the sacrifices, because of the efforts that we saw through this show, like it means so much more to me that we now focus around what that means from BBY to ABY, and like the destruction of the Death Star being such a focal point in like the evolution of the universe. And Andres, to help close us out, you've talked a lot about Andor, its legacy, its impact, its relevance to our times in modern events online. Just what does that mean for you? Just being able to sit through the show and have it impact you in such an important way.
Yeah, obviously the relevancy of it to me is still the most powerful aspect of what this show represents. I really hope that's not lost on people. It's just we get lost in the lines and the one-liners and the writing and the quality and the production design, but at the center of it is still the message that it's trying to communicate. And I think it's a message that it's been trying to communicate since season 1, which is the rise of fascism, what that looks like, and again, the importance of trying to stop it and doing everything we can to stop it. The importance of try, right? Nemec's manifesto, that's how he ends his manifesto, saying just try to stand up against it, try to stop this, use everything in your toolbox to make sure that we can try and prevent awful things from happening. And if we see awful things happening, to speak up and to stand against it. I still think that's the most important aspect of what Andor represents. If I'm able to, Eric, very quickly, just because I'm a big picture Star Wars guy. I've been a big picture Star Wars guy for years. And I really do feel like I'm going to echo a lot of what Kyle said as far as I don't want people to say this is now what Star Wars should be. Because Star Wars can be a lot of things. And I do, as someone who's been kind of disappointed with not just people's reactions, but also Lucasfilm's reaction to shows like The Acolyte, for example, not giving that a second chance. We just mentioned the importance of a season 2 and what that could look like for a show. I know, Hannah, you mentioned that. The importance of what that could have been for a season 2 of The Acolyte, or for other shows that don't have that same opportunity. I do feel like it's important for us to still try and give opportunities to other aspects of what Star Wars is, and not just a tonal, serious, just for adults, prestige kind of shows that we can get from something like an Andor. I still want my Star Wars to be fun, to be for kids, to be silly, and to have different kind of perspectives inside this universe. So I do feel like that's what Star Wars can take from this, but also be Star Wars and be different things to different groups of people.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Star Wars must never leave the kids behind, because that's how we get more Star Wars. We need the next generation to be just as invested as we are.
Skeleton too.
Yeah, like I'm showing my son like the Young Jedi Adventures because that's the only thing he's old enough for now. But I'm putting that stuff on, and we've seen the whole thing multiple times, and he loves lightsabers and he wants to play around with lightsabers. It's just like, yeah, so whatever we can do to.
Y'all sound like a bunch of Jedi. Let's go for the kids. I get to have to be the new indoctrinated to carry the word. The journal of the wills.
Jedi or First Order.
We're all just messengers, right? They were all
Yeah.
just messengers. The entire time it was just messengers of intel, of information, moving forward,
pass it
all the way
along,
to the end, all the way to just tossing the baton. And so many messengers were out there the entire time, trying to balance out the Force once again.
Yeah. I agree, though. But the biggest takeaway I think I've gotten from the show, Andres, like you said, is Nemec's manifesto is point of try. I think that's such an encouraging message. Is that in the face of massive opposition, it can feel overwhelming to be like, well, what can I accomplish? What can I possibly do to help? But his message is like, you can try every bit helps. Every bit is like another crack in the dam, that can like eventually, push the limits and like, break something eventually. And we see that throughout the show. People doing small acts of rebellion, people, it's the Imperial pilot that helps Cassian get into the TIE fighter, the people who locked the door, so they couldn't cut off Mon's speech, things like that, really helps or sell the message that, everything that we can do to, in the face of adversity is like, just try and just do something small and hope that it can contribute to the larger picture. And yeah, I think it's a beautiful legacy to leave, the show with, and to look forward to with the future, especially for on the horizon. We have so many things to look forward to with Star Wars. We have Visions coming up. We have the new movies that they're planning right now, and I'm excited for the future and to see it all with all of you as well. Of course, the people who like really make it special and who celebrate it as well. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it for this episode. Again, thank you everyone for joining us. It's been a blast to experience this show through my own lens, but also through all your lenses as well, and how you digest the series and like impart us with your own perspectives of what that means to you, and through your audiences as well, people who watched you and comment on your stuff and tell you what this series means to you, what you're giving back to them, has really been beautiful. We'll throw to everyone here. Everyone's information will be in the links below. Kyle, Lady of the Party, Kat, Sonny, Andres, and Hannah, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it. We'll wrap up here, and I'll catch everyone on the next episode.
Bye.